Welcome. Welcome to our Hangout series, Innovation by Design. This is designed for innovation and design thinking leaders to share what is working, the tips that they have, so that we all can be much more successful. And today's Hangout specifically is going to talk about what does experience design mean to product companies. Before I introduce our stellar panelists, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping. We'll have about 45 minutes of panel dialogue, and then we'll take your questions. So we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes of your questions. If you can please be sure to look at the tab called Question and Topics and submit any questions you have. Also vote on the questions you want to make sure we get to. We'll try to get to all of them, but at least we'll get to the ones with the most votes. And then also there's 2 polls. If you could take the polls, that helps our panelists know how to tailor some of their answers to really better address and resonate what you're looking for. And we have someone standing by on Twitter. @altitude_inc is our profile handle. And then also we're using hashtags innovation by design, hashtag design thinking. And the question that always comes up is, yes, we will send you the record. On Monday, you should have an email which will have a link to the record. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and get started. Experience design should be the beginning, middle, and end of a successful product campaign. If it isn't, your success may be less predictable, as we'll hear today from our panelists. I'm very, very excited that we have experience design experts from United Health, Addeation and Altitude joining us today for what does experience design mean to product companies. So let's go ahead and introduce the panelists and then jump into our dialogue. First, we have Shane Picciotto. Welcome. Thank you for joining us, Shane.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Shane is a detective and engineer at heart and works as senior product strategy consultant in human-centered design at Fusion, which is an arm of the United Health Group, which is a Fortune 6 company. Fusion believes in putting the customer first by leveraging design thinking methodologies to drive business experience and really develop strategies with their internal innovation and consulting team. Okay? And we also have John Jadot. Welcome, John.
Good morning, Gretchen.
He's the co-founder of Addeation, which is a consultancy that focuses on design strategy and also on digital manufacturing for accelerated product development and business model innovation. John is also a research scientist at MIT. Prior to Addeation, John led the innovation program at Cabot, a global performance materials company. Plus, he worked in advanced product design at Ford Motor Company. So as you can start to see, our panelists come from different aspects and different experiences, which should be a good value to be able to hear from different perspectives. All right, so we have a consultant, and we also have Shane from United Health. And now we have Tom Burchard, who's the VP of Experience Design at Altitude, which is a design thinking consultancy. It's now part of the IoT and product innovation group within Accenture. Tom focuses on understanding and designing the complex encounters that constitute the rich and multidimensional relationships between people and companies. At Altitude, Experience designs the practice of strategy-led design that creates product services and brand engagements that make customers really think, feel, and behave differently. Altitude is a design and innovation consulting firm based in Boston. We have clients like Under Armour, Nike, Thermo Scientific, to name a few. And I am Gretchen Hoffman, Vice President of Marketing at Altitude. And my role today is as the moderator. So let's go ahead and get started. By way of kicking it off, it might be great for us all to make sure we have the same definition or understand the definition we're talking about of what is experience design. So Shane, I'd love to have you tell us from your viewpoint, what is experience design and what do you believe the benefit of experience design is?
Awesome. And Gretchen, I completely agree with setting the foundation of our understanding. For myself, I start thinking about experience design, and I begin by thinking about what is a product. And Tom, you mentioned this earlier. And to me, the product is a specific set of features or functions that something has. So it could be a running shoe or it could be an app on your phone. And if you draw a circle around that product, you then have a small piece of the experience. But the experience really is the much larger circle that incorporates the person that's using that product. So it's all their interactions, and I love the word that you said when thinking about from Tom's point of view, it's the rich interactions that that person has with the product. So that's what experience design is in my mind. And the benefit is that when you think about the user, you end up creating something that they want, and it's not something that just you want. So if you think about product from a traditional point of view, it's designing from the inside out. It's like, this is what I think it should be. But when you think about it from experience design, you're going from the outside in and thinking much more about what does that person or that user want.
That's a great way to put it, whether you're designing from the inside out or outside in. I think that gives a very good visual for folks. So John, how would you define it?
Yeah, I love that, inside out, outside in kind of thinking and trade-off. And, when companies think about innovation, this is a really exciting, period today. What allows companies to be successful is their ability to create and commercialize innovative products. But when they think about innovation, it's often new product breakthroughs or new business models. But when you look at the most successful products or companies today, what differentiates them from the rest is not their innovative product features. There are many examples where a company has superior product features than another company. What truly sets them apart is their understanding of the customer journey, the overall customer journey from initial shopping and all the way through to the brand consumption cycle. And they design their products and structure their operations to produce consistent and positive experiences. So experience design starts with putting the customer in the center, as we've said, and then working outwards by understanding the physical and virtual environments, the customer needs and pain points and so on, and designing the right operating model to optimize the experience based on each segment. And I think it's important to recognize that we need to think about the different segments because each segment will require a different experience design.
Yeah, great. It's definitely, as we talk about, it's really understanding what the users want and not just assuming that we know, right? So, Tom, how would you define experience design and the benefits?
Sure, thanks, Gretchen. Good morning, everybody. I'd love to build on what's been said already. For me, the way I think about experience design, it's the practice of designing products with a focus on the quality of the user experience and less emphasis on improving or increasing the functionality. And that's not that the functionality isn't important, because it obviously is, but it fundamentally starts with a different intent, which is to connect emotionally or develop a strong emotional relationship with that end user. The benefit for me is the fact that by developing that strong emotional connection, we're able to create a competitive advantage over time, or a sustainable one, as opposed to that of technology, because with the race of technology and sort of feature increases right now, they're short-lived. As soon as somebody has, a particular feature or technology, it's a very short-lived advantage in the marketplace, where that emotional connection is sort of a one that lasts and has longevity to it.
Yeah, it's interesting, the emotional connection and having them feel that we really do have empathy, right? Understanding of what their needs are, I think can help companies get a lot more loyal customers, as they're starting to demonstrate more using experience design. So, it's definitely the path we're seeing more and more companies going down with our customers.
I was going to say, John, when John mentioned thinking about the journey from the customer's perspective, even thinking about what's the beginning and the end point can often yield a new insight that you had never thought about before. Mm-hmm. But you don't think about that if you're thinking about it from a product and a feature or function perspective. So I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, no, good pickup there. So let's go ahead, Shane, while we have you up here, let's talk the key principles really that support experience design approach.
Excellent. So for me, the key principles I found when I think about experience design, they hold true whether or not I'm working with a large group and having them think about what is this new experience that they want to create, or working on my own, thinking what is the right way to set up a product for success. And they echo what we talked about, but one of them is begin with the end in mind. So folks who have read the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People have heard of this before, and I think it's especially powerful when we think about the user, because the user, that's the end that we have in mind, and it's something that we as people are much better at projecting our own thoughts than really putting ourselves in somebody else's shoes. And so if the end is something that's going to make the user happy and develop those emotional connections that, Tom, you were talking about, I think that's one principle. The second one is seek first to understand and then to be understood. And so oftentimes, if we have an idea and we're like, oh, this is what it needs to do, and we get so excited and passionate about it, but that's trying to impose on someone else, when really we need to understand first what it is they're looking to do, or what experience they're trying to have. And the third one, I would say, is test early and often. So what you have in your mind has a lot of assumptions, or even when you write it down and talk with folks, there are a lot of pieces that change when you put it into the real world. And so test early and often, seek first to understand, then to be understood, and begin with the end in mind are the 3 that I really focus on.
I love the seek first to understand, obviously all of them, but we were in a hangout a couple months ago, and one of our panelists was talking all about how they had, all these great ideas. Everybody in their company got so wrapped up that they had such an incredible idea, and they executed on it, they built it, right? Like many people have, and in the end it was a flop, right? Because they had never even checked in with their users, because they knew, right? So, I think that's an excellent point, Shane. All right, so John, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I love those 3 points, Shane, and just to build on that. So I believe that there are also 3 key principles that product designers and customer experience practitioners should think about when it comes to experience design. They include time, and by time I mean the minimum amount of time to convey the value proposition. When shopping for a product, for example, it should be clear to the prospective customer what problem the product solves. Can a customer quickly determine if a product meets her needs? So that's incredibly important, the amount of time it takes to articulate that value proposition or convey. The second is effort, and so this is around the product usage and interaction, and they should be obvious. There is an inverse relationship between effort and experience. Products that are easy to understand and operate result in a higher customer experience, even if they have fewer features. So more features actually drive usability complexity, resulting in poor experience. So effort is incredibly important. And the third key principle is consistency. And for a variety of reasons, whether it's within a product experience or a product portfolio. And what we've learned is that meeting customer expectations consistently tends to be more important than exceeding expectations during some interactions. So variability in meeting expectations actually result in poor experience. So those are the key 3 principles: time, effort, and consistency.
Yeah, and what would be good is let's look at some of the companies that are doing a good job with these principles. Tom, can you give us some examples of who's using experience design really well today?
Sure. I mean, I think there's just the classics that we can quickly refer to, which are, the Apples, the Disneys, the IKEAs. I mean, these companies are essentially founded on developing an emotional relationship with people. But the one that I've come across recently that I'm really intrigued by is Carnival Cruise Lines just came out with a program or a product that they call the Ocean Medallion. And essentially this is a wearable piece of technology that it's either a pendant or it's a wristband. And basically what you do is you input your preferences, your likes, your dislikes, the types of things that you're looking to do or accomplish on your cruise. And it essentially orchestrates or amplifies the onboard experience that you have. And that's everything from checking in once you get to the ship, to the types of drinks or meals that you're going to have, your on-land excursions, down to even opening your door for your stateroom before you even get there. And if you choose to opt in, you can also figure out where the other people in your party are on the ship. So essentially what it's done is it's taken this idea of a cruise ship and turned it into a customized and personalized experience. And actually, I just read that Fast Company just noted them as one of the most innovative travel companies out there. So, and they just debuted this at CES with a full replica part of the ship to help demonstrate how this new product works. Very exciting.
Wow, that's cool. Shane, do you have any others you'd like to add, or John, either of you?
When I think about one of the things that resonates with me, and it's been around a while, some people may have used it, but it's Evernote. So Evernote is one of those things where if you describe the functionality, you're like, oh, that exists in other places. So Evernote, for those not familiar with it, is for me, it's essentially a second mind outside of my own. So it's a way for me to keep track and organize all the information that I have, and it leaves my brain open for creating and doing, and not simply keeping track of things. But when you describe Evernote, what is it? Well, it's a way of taking notes on your phone or your computer, but it's so much more than that. That's just the features and the functionality of it. But when I think about companies that are using it well, when you look at all of their outbound messaging, when you look at how their site's designed, it's all focused around how do we help you keep track of and organize information outside of your own head. I think they've done a good job with that.
Yeah, I mean, and we all hear all the other ones, right? From Apple to Amazon to a lot of the other ones that we all know the brand names. And boy, they sure do a good job, which was mentioned before, on the consistency of the user experience too, right? So it's amazing. So, but let's jump. How about companies that are using experience design another way? Like, why do they need to incorporate experience design? And how do these approaches that they're using shift the way product companies think about their opportunity? Shane, do you have some thoughts there?
Absolutely. So I know from my experience, United Health is just in the infancy of becoming a product company, and we're shifting from a project company where we're thinking about what's the ROI, what's the timeline that we need to hit, into a product company. So what's our NPS score, and what's that rich interaction that we want to create. One of the things that I found that is helpful for our group is that as we've made that shift from project to product, there's no foundational way of working. So it's very organic right now. Everyone's just like, oh, we're a product company, this is what I'm going to do. And for me, experience design really sets the foundation, almost like the scientific method does for doing research. So if you're a scientist, you're not just going to go, some do, willy-nilly research, but there's an approach that you take. And for me, that's what experience design is. It's an approach for how you create an experience or a product. And that's something that I know we benefit greatly from.
Hey, Shane, can you talk about what was the impetus or inflection point that caused that change from going from a project company to a product company in United Health?
I think it was, I wish I could say it was internal motivation, but I really think it was externally seeing what other startups are doing. There's a company called Harken Health, which is, it transforms the experience of going in for a doctor's visit into more like a gym experience. So you're able to see how should I be eating. You don't have to make an appointment. You can just walk in and see a doctor. And so seeing startups like that, and then seeing our competitors, our traditional competitors, doing much more, we're like, we need to do something different. Thinking about projects isn't doing it for us. And so that external shift, and then the focus on NPS, which we know traditionally healthcare has been poor in, made that inflection.
Interesting. So, John, do you have any thoughts here on these approaches? And
I think about this a lot when I think about product innovation and business model innovation. And I think we've talked, the overall experience of the customer encompasses, product consumption and company interaction. It's a two-way path. And great innovative products will produce a poor experience if they're not supported by, for example, the right customer service model. And there are many examples where a great product was invented and commercialized, but companies fail to service the customer and manage the overall experience. So, we talk a lot about the iPhone, and we know when it came out, everybody said it's the most innovative product. But I question that today. If you look at the iPhone today, it's difficult to argue that it continues to be successful because of its superior features. If you compare it against Samsung or other products, in fact, I would argue that it has inferior features, and some features like double cameras and better resolution, either competing products were actually much more superior. But the iPhone continues to be successful because the company has invested a significant amount of money in the retail and the retail physical space and training their people and training their people to help us, the customers, understand how to use a product and also broaden their overall partner and app ecosystem to enhance overall experience. So I think what we've been saying is companies that only compete on features. I think what Tom was saying, product features or specifications of a product, technology, is advancing too fast, and it's much more difficult to compete with a company that has thought about the overall offer, the product, as well as the service model and other part of the ecosystem in a holistic fashion. And that's really what gives a company a competitive advantage.
Yeah, that's a good point, is not just thinking about feature to feature. It's the experience that the user's having can far outweigh anything else and can get you that loyalty. It's interesting, at Altitude, one of our customers is Jarden. And I mentioned, I think, on one of the other Hangouts about we used Experience Design to develop Margaritaville, a premium frozen drink maker. And what was interesting about it is they came to us just for another blender design, right? Mm-hmm. And we evolved this by interviewing people on various uses and desires for blenders, right? Like, what should the experience really be? And so we were basically able to tie, as Tom mentioned, to really increase the emotional connection, right? And also the quality of the user experience by coming out with something more than just a blender, right? A lot of that is asking the questions of why, not just yes, no type of questions, right? But really trying to probe further. And like, for example, we came back with talking to avid party goers, right? So not just your typical, everybody wants to have just a smoothie, let's say, but it might be party goers. So we talked to people about how to basically perfect a margarita. And we learned from them on things like, they want shaved ice. And then we learned that, if a blender could really be a conversation piece, right? Let's say at a party, that could also add a lot of value. Mm-hmm. So that's how we really ended up coming back with something that we're designing, a premium priced frozen drink maker. Shaved ice, it helped Jarden enter a whole new category. It sold 1 million products in the first 5 years. And again, that was through really looking at the whole experience process as we were developing. So I just wanted to add that because I think that's a good example.
And okay. I think John's been on the last couple of times. Examples that you've given really highlight how experience design isn't just for the customer, but it's how it changes the company's point of view as well and broadens it. You mentioned talking about the service models, and I think that's one area that I don't give enough credit or thought to myself. But I think it's a really excellent point.
No, I love this point too about the iPhone. I think the way I think about the iPhone, you're right. It's not breakthrough, but it's part of a larger ecosystem, and I think that's where the connection is. I love to refer to Apple as this sort of walled garden of earthly digital delights, right? And you sort of you either buy into the whole thing or you don't, right? And the benefit is the ability to move from one modality to another seamlessly, where your information follows you along, and that you really have this connectivity of experience. And so, I don't think any single one of the Apple products sort of succeeds on its own. It's the fact that they work together in a very controlled environment that is either something that you connect with or not. I think we lost John, the visual.
John, you may have to refresh for.
Will do.
So Tom, what are some of the different ways that you've seen experience design used? We've talked about some of them, but really specifically in the development process. Sure.
What I love about experience design is you have a way of connecting with people with products that they haven't necessarily had a relationship with or a valued relationship with. So, a quick example is Nest. I mean, essentially it was a dial on a wall that nobody cared about. And they basically turned that into a feeling of home comfort and security. right? So that now you care about this thermostat on your wall because it essentially makes your living and your environment that much better and that much more efficient. For me, a recent project I can talk about is a startup company called Naya, and they wanted to enter the breast pumping product business with the goal of really trying to create a better product experience for new moms. And as we all probably know, if you've ever seen a breast pump, they're essentially medical devices. I would even call them devices that have no sense of humanity. They look like they really came out of a medical environment. And these are things that unfortunately moms have to drag around with them, not only in the home, but into the workplace. So what we did is we started with some deep research trying to understand moms, their needs, and the key emotional drivers that came out of this were a sense of not only providing love, but nourishment to probably the most important being that these people have recently been introduced to, which is their newborn child. And so the product allows you not only to monitor the amount of milk that you're expressing or that your child is taking in, but we also designed a product that has a sort of clean, simple, classic look to it that also borrowed heavily from the sort of fashion handbags, high-end fashion handbags, to create a product that fits into the fabric of people's lives. You know, so that it isn't this stigma when you walk into the office that you're dragging a piece of medical equipment in and letting everybody know that you're going to be taking a break to do, you know, some pumping. Instead, it's a product that you can be proud of, one that sort of expresses, you know, the value you have around this, and that it becomes more of a health lifestyle product as opposed to a medical device. And so I think being able to make that connection where people now feel associated positively with the types of products that and the services that might be associated with those is the real benefit. So creating, again, connections that haven't existed before.
Yeah, that's a great example, Tom. And John, do you have any that you'd like to share?
So different ways that I've used experience design in the product development. Just want to make sure that
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
So you know, in my role in advanced design and also building innovation, we learned that it was incredibly valuable to involve the customer very early in the cost of development process. Very similar to what you said, Gretchen, and you know, with the blender. But also later in the product testing phase, what I've learned over the years is that the actual experience and how customers feel about the product when they actually experience it is cannot be replaced compared to a survey. So it's a lot more important than what they tell you what they want or they need. The product, you know, interaction and how they feel about it, how, you know, what comes out like, what their overall experience is becomes really important in making product adjustments based on that actual experience. So I think thinking about experience very early on in the front end of the innovation process will yield a much more richer experience in the end of that innovation process.
Very true.
Shane, do you want to jump in and talk maybe a little bit about what you're finding, and then also really where's experience design had the most impact that you're seeing?
I'll start off with the area that has had the most impact that surprised me, and that's in terms of our own employee satisfaction. So I get product development teams of 20 people together and lead them, help them think about what is that journey, what is the beginning and the end. And they do this in a day-and-a-half session. At the end of the day and a half, people are like, I'm excited to work for United Health again. And I'm like, that's perfect. Like that for me is one of the most satisfying pieces, is in the short term, knowing that simply by taking this perspective, our employees are happier. And then long term, it's going to be better for our customers as well. So that's one of the biggest areas of impact. And then we've heard it echoed before, but simply the accelerated development. We're able to when we are able to bring in development, and even when we're not, we see significantly shorter cycle times, anywhere from 66% faster getting to market than if we were to have done it the traditional way.
Yeah, I think the shorter to market definitely is a value for folks, especially if it's going to be something that's more successful. So, Tom, what are your thoughts here in terms of where's experience design had the most impact that you're seeing with our customers?
Yeah, I mean, so we've talked a lot about the impact on the end consumer, which is really the person that we're trying to impact. But I think there's a lot of benefits to companies too that are worth noting. So I think developing or creating or establishing market leadership is a key impact for companies. So I can relate a story from years ago. Pampers came to me and my team asking us to design a better diaper. They were losing market share at the time to Huggies, their biggest competitor, in a category that essentially Pampers had innovated and created. And so, we started naturally with all the functional improvements, looking around fastening, fit, alignment, waste management, all the things that go into a diaper. And as we showed these to moms, they weren't really resonating, or they weren't having the kind of impact that we were hoping to have. And largely because Pampers had spent millions of dollars telling everybody that their diapers fit better and didn't leak. And that's essentially what moms were feeding back to us. So we had to step back and really spend a lot more times with moms in their homes. And we had discussions not around diapers, but around parenting, around child development. And what came to light was some key moments that seem obvious now, but at the time was, the first time the baby rolled over or crawled or walked. And the significance of that, we realized, was that babies don't come with instruction manuals, right? And moms are just trying to show themselves and everybody around them that their child is developing naturally, right? Or appropriately. And so what we did with that insight is we used that to help establish what we called the baby stages of development diaper line. So think swaddlers, crawlers, cruisers. And so a different diaper was created for each stage of baby's development. Now, that seems obvious now because that happened some time ago. But, if we'd started the project and say like, hey, well, we're going to connect child development with portable waste management, people would have said you're crazy, right? But in the end, what it did is it really connected moms to the Pamper diaper line. And then helped Pampers regain and maintain market share since that time. So, here again, I think it's sort of underscoring the point. We didn't actually make major functional improvements in the diaper. What we did is we had a way to connect people with why Pampers was the appropriate brand to choose for your child, because it was going to help them develop.
And Tom, both of the examples that you've given are excellent because they highlight how something so essentially the diaper industry had been unchanged for many years, and yet all of a sudden creating that emotional connection, and it's totally different. And same with the pumping machine. I think those are examples of how something may look like it's unchanging, and yet you introduce that emotional connection, and it's a new market.
Right, and it takes time to dig. I mean, because people aren't just going to offer up, what I like is a child development line, with my diapers. So you really have to go into it really looking for those key moments, those key values that are going to help connect people to the product. I think we have to have John refresh again. We lost him.
So it's interesting because as we talk about this, the emotional connection, I think most companies want to figure out how many evangelists they can get, right, for their products and things. And I think the stronger positive emotional connection that people can get, you're going to get more of those evangelists. And it makes me think of BMW, right? I mean, I moved here recently from San Francisco, so California, to Boston, and everyone in California drives a BMW, or about everyone, it seems like. And it's interesting when you talk with folks there, they expect, to have a fabulous experience. And even think about like BMW's tagline, the ultimate driving machine, right? I mean, they clearly use experience design to figure out what is really going to be needed and what people are going to be passionate about. Even from the double round adaptive headlights, those, I mean, it's very recognizable as a BMW, but it also helps people be able to see around corners and straight roads, and designed to make sure that people that buy a BMW buy another and another and another. And, I think that brand has done a great job leveraging experience design. So,
Couldn't agree more.
it's incredible. And I mean, you just feel it, right? Even, when you see the ads or see someone driving one, you can just feel that they feel great being in it. And it just really, I think, tugs at that emotion that we're talking about.
Well, and I can add to that too. I mean, a car is a very complex product, and the fact that it can reveal itself to you over time and still create that kind of intrigue and tell its story to you, not just sort of in a ta-da moment, but that you slowly realize and appreciate how these different components come together to create that experience that you're looking for, is the magic and the mastery, I think, that BMW has put into their products.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's jump on best practices. I think we've actually covered quite a few. But Shane, what best practices help you to achieve even more innovation success with your development process efforts?
So I know for us in particular, United Health Group has employees all over the U.S. and oftentimes the development teams are all over the U.S. as well. So for us, it's simply getting everyone together for that day and a half, longer if they can, to sit down and focus on what do we want this experience to be. So we don't have distractions. We're all in the same place. And that sort of deep focused work catapults them ahead in terms of how do they need to start thinking about the experience. So I'd say that's one set of best practices, getting together and having it be focused time, which may be unique to us. Secondly, it's partnering where appropriate. So a development team doesn't have to do everything on their own. They might have the business owner, maybe they have a development team, but if not, then going outside for the development team and not trying to hire one and bring one in, we find lets them focus on creating that experience where they can add the most value and not going off and doing something else. So partnering where appropriate and getting everyone together are two of the best ones that we've found.
Yeah, great points. Well, I just want to jump in here for a minute and remind folks that we are going to take your questions. We will take your questions starting in about 5 to 10 minutes. So if you please can go look at the questions and topics tab and make sure to submit your questions and vote on any questions you want to make sure we get to. That would be great. We'll try to get to all of them. However, the ones with the votes will definitely be the ones we take first. So we appreciate very much if you could submit your questions. And also feel free to engage on Twitter. We're at altitude_Inc. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, so a little bit more from the panel. This is a great dialogue. And Tom, would love to hear any stories that you can think on that really of what's worked and what has not worked and why.
Sure. Well, for me, I mean, creating meaningful products really starts with the development of empathy for the people who you're trying to serve. So in order to get that, you really have to, as I described around the diaper product, go into context, meet people where they are, understand the job to be done or how this fits into the fabric of their life. And that's really best done through in-depth qualitative research in context. And so it means getting out of your office, going in and meeting people, and going in with an open mind. Because again, on the diaper project, it wasn't going to be clear that child development was the key insight that we needed to leverage. So I think that's where it works. Where it doesn't work on the flip side is when people start to try and take shortcuts and use things like surveys to try and figure out, what's really meaningful, because people don't know what to tell you, right? They don't know what parts of their life are really going to have the impact on the product or the brand that you're bringing to this, and how they're going to connect those two together. So surveys are great at quantitatively assessing something, but they're terrible at answering the question why. And it's really the answered why that gets to the real meaning that we're looking to. I think the other one too is sort of the presumption that we already know what people want, which I think is a really dangerous one. And in many cases, we are the users of these products, but I think it's really incumbent and inherent on us to be able to go into any new opportunity as if we're coming from a different planet, like we've never seen these products before, or how they fit into people's lives. And it's only through that lack of bias, by kind of, coming in with fresh eyes and a fresh perspective, that we can see things for the way they really are and what they actually mean.
And I'll jump Then Tom, when you started talking about the why, it reminded me of there's a TED talk by Simon Sinek, and he talks about the golden circle, and he's got talks about you can communicate one of two ways, starting with the why and then going into the how and the what, or the opposite, talking about the what and then the how and the why. And you mentioned that surveys are good for getting the quantitative aspect, but they don't get to people's reactions or their feelings. And that's because those are literally two different parts of the brain, the one that articulates speech and the one that controls feelings or action. And so if you ask a survey, you're not asking the right, or you're not able to get to that insight of why do people actually take an action, which is what the observation does.
Absolutely. So true.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And I mean, Tom, your comment about get up and get out of the office, essentially, like go where your users are, experience what they are, get in the trenches, I think is really, really important to really understanding what their needs are, along with asking the why, right? I think it's a great point.
Yeah, and I want to echo that. I mean, the best products where I've been involved in that we designed are the ones, like Tom said, where we did a great deal of ethnographic research. We observed what people were doing, how they're using a particular product, and then having an open mind and talking to them about their situation. So not necessarily how to use a diaper, but what's the day in the life of a parent, right? And so divergent thinking is what I think what I've learned in the past is being able to diverge and have an open mind in terms of the type of questions that you ask, and more open-ended questions. I think it's incredibly important in getting the right insights. And once you have that, you can do more convergent thinking. And so the challenge with that, what I've discovered, it's not, you don't get something for free. So being able to do ethnographic and do product development to accelerate the product cycle, what I found is that increases the overall cost of product development. So the more you involve a customer, unfortunately, in the overall product design throughout, you get a better product. But the changes that you make in the middle of the product design phase, or maybe even later, the cost of those changes is significantly higher. Yeah. So I haven't been able to solve that problem.
No, I think that's true. I mean, but if you see that, I mean, I see innovation as not like a pill you take once and then, you got innovation and you're done. It's a commitment to learning over time. And like we did on the Pampers project, we're trying to get to these, I guess I would consider them truths, these things, these values. While technology changes, markets change, there are certain things that are truths, that are values in people's lives that fundamentally don't change. Yeah. And so being able to take the time, to your point, John, and articulate what those are, uncover those, has a lasting effect over time. So you can decide what new technologies to bring, how to change your offering, how to change your messaging. But essentially, those values don't change over time. So making the effort and the investment to do that is a long-term payoff.
And I think, John, you described something really well, which is that experience design doesn't solve all your problems, or maybe it does, but it comes with shifting the cost up a little bit earlier. And so it's not like, oh, well, of course we should switch to experience design. I mean, you should, but understand the cost associated with that. And the cost outweigh the benefits, but there are costs associated with it, which I think is an excellent point.
Yeah, great point. It's interesting. DeWalt had come to us asking for a next tool. And of course, when we think of tool, we might think of a power drill or something, right? And in the end, by using experience design and really going out there and seeing, how people are using their tools, what was needed, we actually designed a radio, right? And, who would have guessed that that's their next tool for every job? But the reality is people wanted music. They don't want a CD player. They don't want to be changing CDs, right? Takes them away from their work. They don't want to use a radio if it's going to use another outlet. So we designed a radio essentially that had a roll bar, so it was rugged. It had an additional outlet and obviously a lot more things, but it was all through going out on site, like Tom mentioned, get out of the office, really understanding what they needed. And it became, as I mentioned, a very top seller. Other industries started wanting to buy it and really developed more loyalty. So again, getting out there is so critical. Asking the whys and not making preconceived assumptions, notions before you're out there, I think is really, really important. So we've talked about a lot of things that are right. Tom, maybe you could jump in and talk a little bit in terms of what are the wrong ways to use experience design?
Well, I think I tried to allude to that before. I don't know if there's a wrong way. If you're focusing on the experience, you're kind of on the right lane anyway. But I think sort of the presumptive nature that we know what people want is a bad approach. I think, as we mentioned, getting out there in the field is really key, but then taking that and into an agile process where you quickly try and prototype something early, often, fail, learn, and then recycle back through is probably the best way to do it. So, the wrong way to do it is kind of a waterfall process where you maybe have an insight or an idea and you wait until the end to go to market and try and test this thing, which is the most expensive possible market test you could do, only to find out in some cases that you're going to fail, right? So the opportunity to get back with people in an iterative fashion, make them part of the dialogue, reaffirm that the assumptions and the insights that you've developed are really are meaningful to them, builds confidence in the process. So I think testing early and often is the right way to do it. Waiting till the end to try and let the market tell you whether it was right or wrong is probably the expensive and wrong way to do it.
Okay, no, great point. So I promised that we'd leave 10 minutes for your question and answers. So let me just have each of the panelists go around the horn, just give 2 top tips that you want to make sure our listeners take away. It can be repeat what you said before, something new, but whatever you think of the top 2 things you want them to take away that will be valuable would be wonderful. And so why don't we go ahead, Shane, and start with you, and then we'll wrap up with our listeners' questions.
Absolutely. So if there are 2 things to take away that I would think capture the conversation. One is have a bias towards action. So action, getting out of the office, action, test something, but just have that bias towards action and not planning. And the second one is ship it. So get it out there, see what it's like, see what the reaction is. And those two will steer you well on your experience design journey.
Not one and done, I guess.
You got it.
So, John, what are your thoughts? A couple takeaways.
So I love those. I love those too. And what I would add to that is that, think about articulating the value proposition in a way that, like Tom said, the customer can connect to it. It needs to be simple. It needs to be clear, and the benefit statement has to be reliable. I mean, you got to design something and deliver something that people will both understand and value. So we talked about literally with some examples. When I look at an example of that, the Nest is a very good example of that, right? It's simple, it's easy to use, it's multi-channel, and so I think really understanding, regardless of how complex the components of a product is or a process, you need to convey a clear value proposition. And you got it. That at the end of the day, it's not innovation until it ships, right? It's not innovation until it gets in somebody's hands and they value using your product or your service.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's as Sean mentioned, get it out there, but make sure you're seeing what's working, what's not working. We continue to improve on it. So, Tom, what are your thoughts?
Love what's been said. I guess one that I'd love to restate is the fact that creating or establishing an emotional connection, I believe, is a defensible competitive advantage. It's something that is tried and tested. Once you establish that, you've got customers for life, you've got loyalty, you've got products and services that are talk-worthy. And I think with that, the second one I would add is when you start to tell that story, you start to elicit those emotional connections. Make sure you tell a story through all your different touch points. It's not just the product, but as we've talked about in the beginning, it's the total journey from beginning to end. And it's not meaning that you're just purely consistent repeating the message, but that you sort of illustrate the story in a totality, in a way that's engaging to people, that reveals itself over time. And I think that kind of holds people's attention and gets them coming back for more.
Yeah, these are all really great points. Really appreciate everybody's very keen insights. So really for the listeners, think about how memorable of an experience is your design offering to users, right? Make sure you get out there, experience what they're experiencing, ask the why questions, be sure the experience tugs at their emotion. It's positive emotion, right? And so you want them to become loyal customers. That emotion will help that. right? As Tom says, it's a competitive differentiator for sure, right? Look for the experiences like BMW, Apple, Amazon, Nest, some of the ones that have been mentioned. And really, your experience becomes synonymous with your brand reputation. So really, leveraging experience design will help give you that competitive advantage, as you've heard today. I would like to invite folks to go to altitudeinc.com. We have free resources there. And you can also register for the next Hangout, which is Designing Experiences in the IoT Age. So I reference that and would like to now jump into your questions. So for the panelists, if you want to look at them directly, you can go to the questions and topics. We have quite a few. I'm going to go with the ones with the most votes. And with the panelists, I'd ask you to jump in if you feel you have a great answer. So the first one, how does experience design affect category management strategies in point of sales, like supermarkets? How can each brand design its experience within it? I know you guys come from a little bit different point of sale experience.
So I looked at this, so I think the person mentioned supermarkets. It's really really complicated because in this case you don't know the whole experience, right? So if you have a product or a product category that you are retailing, merchandising at Walmart or Whole Foods or other retailers. In some cases you could negotiate where it's at, but in terms of servicing that product and you don't have much control. I think what you need to do, as Tom mentioned, you have to communicate the value proposition of that product in other channels, and the message has to be very, very clear so that at the point of sale, when that customer is making a decision whether they should buy product A or product B, that information should have already been communicated to them prior to that decision point. The second thing I'd like to say about that is you have to keep it simple. I think if you look at the overall retail experience where a lot of the product manufacturers go through a different distribution plan, not everybody's selling their own product, right? You have to keep your product category simple and really easy to understand the benefit between product A and product B. So that's one thing that I think people ought to think about when they're distributing through their products through other channels that they don't necessarily control.
I think that's a great point. I mean, in regard to supermarkets, there's not a lot of huge difference between supermarkets. Markets tend to be largely self-referential until they've done the kind of experience work. I think Whole Foods is probably, the overused example for being able to go in and really sort of expect a different type of experience within a retail environment. They've done a fabulous job and then much admired and much copied. The one that I'm really excited about is the Amazon Go. Completely changes the experience basically by swiping in on the way in. You go in, you take whatever you want, and you walk right out. They've made it barrier free. There's no checkout line. There's no waiting in line, having to wait to give them your money. And as people have said, if you have waiting to give people money, then you've got a problem in your business, right? And so Amazon has really taken that barrier away and offered a completely different experience for folks. And we'll see how successful that is. It's really in a beta right now, but I think it's one of the most significant advances that I've seen in a while.
Yeah, that's a great one. So some of the questions I believe we answered throughout the panel, so I am skipping some. One of the ones that has 3 votes here is what industries would benefit most from experience design? So panelists, do you have any thoughts on what industries you're seeing are benefiting the most? Maybe they're not doing well now and they could benefit from incorporating it, or just overall?
I think I mentioned it before. Medical is just a huge one. I mean, patients or consumers are getting pushed more out of healthcare environments and into home environments, and those medical products are following with them because care needs to be, given outside of that environment. And so I think those types of experiences are ripe for reinvention. The other one I would mention is B2B. Often B2B consumers are not seen in the same regard as business to consumer solutions. I think B2C tends to lead, but B2B, there's big money, there's huge corporations, there's a lot at stake, and I think it's another great opportunity for businesses to really understand and deliver superior experiences.
And I would add to that finance is an industry, or has a category or industry that has gone through that shift and is most recently, you can kind of remember what it was like before mobile banking, before it was, you had Fidelity and others USAA taking more of a experience approach. Like completely echo the sentiments of medical and healthcare in general. I'm so excited because I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, when banks were open from 9 to 3, that was because that's when you were available, right?
Totally.
All right, let's do one more. Sorry.
I just would add to this. I think over the past 10, 15 years, we've seen a migration from physical to virtual. A lot of companies, for a variety of reasons, shifting time and space and lowering the cost to serve, right? And so what I've seen is that actually a lot of the experience that we see in the virtual channel, has a lot. There's a lot that you cannot do in the virtual channel that you can do in the physical channel. And I think what we're going to see is this human touch where I go to a retail outlet. So it's interesting that Amazon that started in the virtual space is now opening supermarkets. And by the way, I think bookstores, right? Because I think we've lost that human connection, and the experience is really integral part an integral part of the human connection. So going back to the supermarket, imagine if I can go in and somebody tells me the difference between 3 different olive oils, right? I mean, there's like 50 different olive oils or breads, and I think that will matter a lot more in the future than we've seen. So the cost will go up, but if you can do it right, I think the overall experience, the companies that can do it right, will have overall more loyalty and higher margins. So that's where I think we are going to go back. And if you go to some places in Paris, the old butcheries and the bakeries, I think you'll like this a lot, Shane. They're coming back. Because people love that experience where you can go into a butchery or bakery and get a type of bread or a pastry. So I think we're going to see that coming back, and it's going to be, those companies will be able to differentiate themselves more on that human interaction, product and human interaction, than companies that just focus on the product, virtual product delivery.
I'm going to jump in with one last question, and then we'll go ahead and wrap. This really has to do with the intersection of technology with the user experience. It's a little bit longer question, but I think it's a good question here. So how has experience design changed due to the hyperconnectivity to the world caused from the digital revolution, like smartphones, social media, et cetera? For example, consumers expect information, products, solutions. They want everything right away. And on their terms. Consumers can easily find information online, connect with family via social media, and not be bounded by traditional constraints with the internet everywhere. So how do we navigate experience design moving forward? Does this change it? And John, you'll have to refresh.
My initial thought is that with the hyperconnectivity, there are now many more options that what you can build, and experience design helps you figure out what you should build. And so it's just made it that much more clear that the hyperconnectivity is giving us much more variance, and experience design helps us decrease that variability and say, okay, this is what we should actually go out and build.
Yeah, I guess I'd add to that. I think hyperconnectivity is one part of it. I think disintermediation is the other big one, which is now we've taken out the middleman, and companies through IoT are directly having conversations and relationships with their end consumer like they've never had before. And what comes with that is a responsibility to deeply understand them and to reinforce the authenticity of that relationship and that offering. But in that is also an opportunity to understand people in a way that you've never done before. And that information, if value is provided, that information can also be returned in a way that can help you to provide better offerings and better solutions for people.
Well, excellent questions. Thank you, listeners, for submitting. Very, very much appreciate it. I know we're at the top of the hour. I really want to thank, again, our panelists for an excellent dialogue, very lively, and from Shane from United Health, John from Addeation, and Tom from Altitude. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.